Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox back for another episode today. I'm absolutely thrilled to have with me River Wellborn. River, first of all, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
River, what was your role in Sherlock Holmes' Mayor of the Night?
I was the primary makeup artist and designer with a specificity in the special effects makeup.
Let's start off by talking a little bit about your background. You just told us you've been in theater sort of forever. So, could you tell us, where'd you grow up?
Yeah, for sure. So I was born in Dallas, Texas, but I moved here to Kerrville when I was pretty young. I was probably about 4 or 5 years old. I've been involved in a lot of theater stuff pretty much since I was about 9 years old. I started going to theater camp, fell in love with it. And years later, here I am. I just graduated with my bachelor's. So obviously, I still love it.
Were you in theater at Tybee High School?
I was, yes, I did it all 4 years that I was at Tybee. It was a really great experience.
What were the role or roles you had at Tybee?
I did a lot of different things. I was both an actor and a crew member, so I did some of their one act stuff. I know I did sound design for Cyrano de Bergerac, which was one that we ended up advancing for a couple more sessions. I was also an actor in The Book of Everything. I played the role of Mother. That was really fun. Unfortunately, COVID cut that competition off short, but still a great experience. I did a handful of other roles like Sybil in it's called The Bold, the Young, and the Murder. That was a very funny show.
And I believe you told us you just graduated from Schreiner. Is that correct?
Yes, I just graduated with my Bachelor of Theater, yeah.
So tell us about the theater degree at Schreiner and then a few words about the theater program.
Yeah, of course. I came in a little bit late. I was a transfer student, so I came in as a sophomore, but it's a really great just opportunity to explore all the different aspects of theater. Jeff Cunningham, who is a professor of theater out there, gives you a really good taste of everything. I did playwriting classes, I did acting classes, I did directing type stuff. And the shows that they do are really student involved. Right now, they're having a lot of more student led activities. Recently, our King Lear production was directed by a student. Me and one other alumni are currently directing short plays that we wrote out at Shriner. So there's so many opportunities to do a bunch of different things.
You were telling us also that you've applied for yet another theater school. Could you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I just like very recently finished my application for the New York Conservatory of the Dramatic Arts out in New York City. It's a 2 year intensive study program in musical theater. It would essentially be like getting an associate's in occupational studies. So I've just recently applied and I'm currently waiting to see how that goes, but I'm very hopeful and excited.
Tell us about your role on Mayor of the Night and what did that entail?
A lot of it was obviously kind of creating sort of the makeup looks. There was some stuff that was more collaborative with CJ. Like he had this one particular character, he had a very distinct look that he wanted in mind. So we worked together kind of on the design of that. And then I did a few test runs before it got brought to screen. A lot of it though was kind of sometimes I just learned things the day of that we were doing. Like, hey, could you add like this kind of look here? Or could you do a little bit of these kinds of like wounds on this character? And so a lot of just little fun improv and getting to take a lot of the skills that I had and kind of transferring them into being like a more film type setting.
So, what is there a difference between makeup on the stage as opposed to for film?
Oh yeah, it's a world of difference. The main thing is just visibility. On stage, you have a good bit of distance between you and the audience. Even in the smaller settings, you have to make things look so much more intense and up close they look not realistic whatsoever. Like a bruise, for example, is going to be bright purple. That's not how bruises look. And the opposite end, on film, they have to look a lot more realistic and more dynamic. So a bruise for film might have a lot more of those greens and the yellows and little tiny details speckled in rather than just kind of a big overarching color.
On stage, do you use makeup to, I don't want to say shock audiences, but to get a visceral reaction from them?
Sometimes, yes. It depends also on the use of it. A really big example that a lot of people will know in theater is in Little Shop of Horrors. There's a part where a character has to come out with a big shiner on her eye. And that is kind of meant to be a very shocking thing because, oh, you're now realizing this character is going through this abusive relationship kind of thing. So sometimes it is a really big shock value. Sometimes it's just kind of meant to be something to add to the character. But there are times where you can definitely use it to really grab the audience's attention.
The example I was going to use is in King Lear when he's
Uh,
blinded. And several years ago, I saw a production. I was in England, and so saw the Royal Shakespeare Company, and I knew it was coming. Seen it half a dozen times, and they put a plastic box around his head and they blew it out so that it went towards the audience. And even I jumped.
Oh, yeah. I was the makeup artist for the King Lear out at the Shriner too recently. That was fun. I didn't get to do as much of the blood stuff. That was more the director, Scooty Garrett. I think he used like a sponge filled with blood. So when they held it over his eye, it was really, it's freaky.
You mentioned that as part of your process, you would work with the director. Would you do sketches? Did you just start putting makeup or blood or whatever the compound was on an actor and see where it went, get the director's input? What was that creative process like for you?
So the first thing I would do would be make a face chart, which is more of like a drawing. I typically use like a digital kind of thing, which is really good to get a base design, make sure we're on the same page with what we're creating. But it's not as good in that it looks always there's a difference when you put it on an actor versus on a piece of white paper. So once we had the kind of base design, he was like, yeah, that's kind of the general vibe I'm going for. I did tests. So some of it were on the actress herself. I did 1 or 2 tests on myself. I remember I had like just another Shriner student who was available that day. I was like, hey, let me try this, see if you like this and kind of collaborating from there. Every time I would send him a photo, he would say, oh, I like this part, but I didn't like this as much. Or, oh, can you tone down this and then add more here? Until we kind of got to a place where we agreed that we liked it.
Without giving too much away about the movie, there may be parts where people are dead, and there may be parts where people come back after death. How do you sort of create that look, which we would all call a ghost, but an ashen look that communicates this person is from the other world, another world, not of this world?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so there's obviously different types of scenarios call for different types of ghost looks. So making this person paler, I have this really nice little like powder that I like to use. Or something that we kind of really went into was using kind of more of the blues kind of contrast, rather like in the more realistic way, but also kind of having a veining kind of fun thing that we did that was more distinct of something that might be more on the supernatural side rather than someone who is like a real person who is dying or deceased in the moment.
I once saw a production of Macbeth where the scene where Lady Macbeth, it's clear she's gone mad.
Mm.
And what struck me about that scene was you could tell that simply from the makeup, the
Yeah.
way they did her arms and, of course, her face. Is that something that you really strive to communicate it, not an emotion, but really a state of mind by makeup?
Oh, yeah. There's so many little like details you can add to someone to really kind of show them having a harder and harder time. I love just the tiniest amount of the red eyeshadow under the eyes can really exaggerate the effect of someone who's struggling, whether it conveys something like they've been crying a lot or that they've lost sleep. So I love finding little moments to add details in the makeup that can convey it without it being obvious. Oh, this person's crazy, but definitely something small. There's something more going on than what you can see or is just being verbally said.
What were two or three of the highlights of working on the movie for you?
One of the big ones for me is I think just getting to meet so many really cool people and especially getting to work with people that I had worked with in a theatrical context, now in a film context. That was just a really fun thing to be able to do. It was really cool getting to go out to the location and getting to see all of the cool sets and then seeing how that kind of transferred over into the film and stuff like that, how cohesive it was. That was just something really fascinating. And again, just reiterating the people that worked there, like everyone was so kind, everyone was so welcoming. And even when it was late hours, we were still finding moments to laugh or take that time check in with each other, all that stuff.
Do you have any role in post production?
Not as much, no. I helped a little bit with something they needed to some like audio recording stuff. So we went over and did that. But like, I'm not as much of an editor. As much as I've been fascinated by that aspect, I'm not that talented.
So, where do you hope to take your professional career in theater or film?
I mean, I would really love to delve into more of the world of professional acting. That's definitely where I've started and where kind of kept going towards. But I'd love to be able to do more stuff that is in the design aspect, whether it be makeup, costume. And eventually, I'd really love to do more of the directing aspect. I really love children's theater, and I'd really love to be able to take that at some point.
You learned from your directing work at Shriner or post grad Shriner?
I think I've learned a lot about just really being confident in my work. I think that's the thing with a lot of artists is second guessing yourself, just learning how to take the idea you have and run with it and being able to collaborate with all kinds of brilliant minds, not trying to force it to be a one man show where you're taking on everything and then it's built up and it's nothing but stress. So that's been the main thing that I've been learning about.
How do you communicate to another actor your vision And then the follow-up is, how do you work with that actor if their vision may be different than yours, or they may have other aspects that perhaps you haven't seen in that character?
I think, like anything, it's definitely a collaborative process. So I will go in with my base idea and we communicate that with the actor, and the actor might have something that's completely different. And then we talk it out and we find a good, either like a middle ground, or we find out what's going to work best with the picture as an overall. So what is it that we're trying to express regardless of the ideas in particular we have, and making sure that our ideas work together to express that idea.
Uh, what's next for River?
Well, I'm directing out at Shriner University, and then after that, just kind of seeing where it takes me. I'm hopeful for this place I've just applied to, but you know what? I'm just gonna kind of see where life takes me.
Well, River, thank you so much for taking the time to visit with me and us on this podcast. Before we leave, I wanted to ask you, if any listener wanted to connect with you, what would be the best way for them to do so?
Facebook's probably the best way to reach out to me. It's just River Wellborn on Facebook. You'll see my little profile picture. It's me at a Ren fair few years ago.
River, thank you so much for taking the time to visit with us today.
Of course, I'm so glad that y'all have me here today.